From? Where are you from? Just with together?
What?
You together with the oh. With the media? What? You with the media? How many tourism?
דמם כמים סביבות ירושלים ואין קובר. They have shed their blood like water round about Jerusalem with no one to bury them. היינו חרפה לשכנינו, לעג וקלס לסביבותינו. We're a humiliation to our neighbors, an object of scorn and derision to those around us. How long, Adonai, will you be angry? Forever? Will you jealously burn like fire? Pour out your wrath upon the nations that know you not, and upon the kingdom that do not call upon your name. For they have devoured Jacob and his habitation they have laid waste. Al tizkor lanu avonot rishonim, maher yakadmunu rachamecha, ki delonu ma'od. Remember not against us the sins of our ancestors. Let your compassion come swiftly toward us, for we have been brought very low. Azreinu Elohei Yishenu al devar kavod shemecha, v'hatzilenu v'chaper al chatotenu leman shemecha.
Azreinu Elohei Yishenu al devar kavod shemecha, v'hatzilenu v'chaper al chatotenu leman shemecha.
We'll say this will be our last one. Help us, God, of our deviant, for the sake of the glory of your name. Save us and atone our sins for the sake of your name.
Amen.
Amen.
Shir Mizmor La'asaf. A song by Asaph. O God, do not be not, hold yourself silent, deaf and be not still. O God, for behold your foes are in uproar, and those who hate you have raised their head against your people. They plot deviously in secret. They take counsel against those sheltered by you. They said, come, let us cut them off from nationhood, so that not remembered will be the name of Israel any longer, for they take counsel together. The single mind against you, a covenant they strike, the tents of Edom and Ishmaelites, Moab and Hagrites, Gebal, et Ammon, and Amalek, Philistine with the inhabitants of Tyre. Even Assyria joined with them. They became the strong arm of the sons of Lot, Selah. Do to them as to Binyan, as to Sisera, as to Yavan, at Kishron Brook, who were destroyed at Endor. They became dung for the earth. Make their nobles like Oreb, and Zev, and Kezeva, Ukeshalmunah, all their princes, who said, we will conquer for ourselves the pleasant inhabitants of God. Oh my God, make them like the whirling chaff, that stubble before the wind, like a fire burning the forest, and like a flame that sets ablaze mountains. So pursue them with your tempest and with your storm. Terrify them. Fill their faces with shame. Then they will seek your name, Hashem. Let them be shamed and terrified forever. Then they will be disgraced and they will be doomed. Then they will know that you, whose name is Hashem, are alone, most high over all the earth.
Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Israel. Go is one collision. You are Amen. Shemo b'Yahava Melech Ozer Umoshia Umagei Baruch Atah Adonai Magei Abraham Atah Gibor Li'olam Adonai Machayim Eisim Atah Rav Oshia Mashi for Ruach Umorid Hashem V'chal Machayim Chesed Machayim Eisim Barachim Rabin Somech Noflim Bro Feichol Umatir Asurim Umakayim Umunusol L'Shenei Afar Micha Mocha Ba'al Gevurot Umidom Alach Melech Nemes Machayim Atzmi Yeshua Lemon Azwal Achrayos Be'ezem Chanem Echad Deberos Kael Brochato Adonai Chonein Hadoaz Hashivenu Avinu L'Sarasecha V'Karbenu Makenu L'Avorasecha V'Hachasivenu B'Seshuva Shleimo L'Fanecha Brochato Adonai Harotze B'Seshuva Slach Lanu Avinu Ki Chatanu V'Chamakenu Ki Bashanu Ki Mochei V'Slachata Brochato Adonai Chanun Hamaber L'Sloa Molachom Makosenu Kiel Melech Rofei Neman V'Rachamon Atah Brochat Adonai Rofei Cholei Amo Yisrael Borei Choleinu Hanolin Asashon Ozos Yet Kominesu V'Sol Atava V'Sein Kalumoto Livrocha V'Nei Damosavenu Mituvecha U'Borei Shonasenu Kashanim Ataros Brochat Adonai Levorech Hashonim Tekah b'shofar gadol l'cheirusenu, v'sonei sekabes kol yosenu, v'kapsenu yachad mi'arba kanfo, v'heiro yikaresu, v'hazir mi'asakir u'seshaber u'samager, v'sachniya b'meheiro b'yamenu, b'rochat Adonai, shover ayavim u'machniya zaydim. Amen.
Shalom, I'm Helen Friedman. I'm the Executive Director of Americans for a Safe Israel, and I'm so pleased and proud to say that we are here in the Holy Land of Israel, in the holy city of Yerushalayim, standing in front of the holy Kotel HaMaravi, and we've come 35 strong from all parts of the United States. We have people from New Mexico and Oregon, New York, New Jersey, Chicago, Philadelphia, Baltimore, and so on, that have all joined together to come to Israel to show chizuk for the Jewish people of Israel. We have just made an effort to go up to the Har HaBayit. We knew when we started that we would probably be prevented from doing so, but we feel that in this holy land, holy city, that Jews must be given the opportunity to go to the holiest place of all for the Jewish people, and that is the Har HaBayit. And we got about a quarter of the way up the ramp when soldiers, who I know were just following orders, told us that we could not go. It was asur, asur. It wasn't just that it was sagur, closed, but it was asur, forbidden for Jews to go to the holiest place. So we know, of course, that only Muslims are now allowed to do that, and we think this is busha v'chlima. This is a disgrace that in the Jewish state that Jews are barred from their holiest place. Fortunately, we are planning to go to the Marat HaMachpelah in Hebron, and for now, until something disastrous, God forbid, should occur, we will be allowed to go to the Marat HaMachpelah to celebrate Shabbat Chayei Sarah, which we feel so honored and so privileged to be able to do. And we traveled around the Shomron. We were in Shiloh, we were in Eli, we were on the outskirts of Shechem at Alon Moreh, we were in Tapuach, we were in all the holy cities, all the holy biblical land of Israel, and we are filled with pride and joy at the fact that we're able to be here to celebrate this remarkable land, and that we should have the zechut to be here at this time in this place to be able to enjoy this special privilege. And we pray that the Israeli government will have the very good sense to keep this land for the Jewish people and prevent it from becoming just another place among the nations, disappearing into some medley of indistinguishable nations. This is the Jewish state, and we want it to stay that way.
Where did you spend the night several nights ago?
I must tell you, we arrived, we had planned to stay our first 2 nights at the Eshel HaShomron Hotel in Ariel. And even though we knew, as we were boarding the plane in New York to fly here to Israel, we knew that there had been a bombing right outside the Eshel HaShomron Hotel. And I am so proud to say that not one member of the group backed out and said that we can't go, we can't stay there. We went, we spoke to the people there. We know that Menachem Gilboa, who is the manager of the hotel and the fellow who always greeted us when we were there, that Menachem is now wounded, very severely wounded, is in the hospital because he was very badly hurt in that suicide bombing. And we also, unfortunately, had to go to the funeral in Itamar for one of the soldiers who was killed in that same terrorist attack. A wonderful young man. There were a number of soldiers who were killed. We went to the funeral. I cannot tell you how moving that was. Thousands of Jews marching through the area, following the hearse, and the tragedy is, and I don't know how the Jewish people can bear this, one funeral after another on a daily basis. It's too cruel, and we pray that the government will put an end to that.
Have you felt safe?
We feel safe. Of course we feel safe. We're here in our land, and thank God the Army does a wonderful job taking care of us. We've traveled in armored buses, and we have wonderful guides and drivers and so on. We feel perfectly safe. There hasn't been a word from any of the participants about danger or fear. In fact, we're going to Hebron, and I know when we came into the airport, and the woman who stamped the passport said to me, "Why are you here?" I said, "Well, it's Eishes Hayir, Eishes Sar in Hebron, and so we're planning to go for that." She says, "You're going to Hebron?" And she says, "Even I haven't been there." I said, "I know. It's very tragic. Israelis don't go to Hebron, but we go every time we have an opportunity." We're also going to Gaza. And we did that on our last trip here too. We went to Gush Katif, we went to Netzarim and Kfar Darom, and in Yitzhak Hashem, we will repeat that experience this coming Sunday.
Would you recommend that others come and visit?
Absolutely. This is the place for Jews to be. We should all be here, not just visiting. We should be living here. We should be farming the land and settling the land and living in the cities and in the country, in the Golan, in the Negev, throughout the Shomron and Yehuda and Gaza and all these places. People are shocked when they hear that there are Jews in Gaza. It's just a beautiful place to live on the seashore. There are wonderful farms, wonderful research and development places. Just a truly wonderful place. I strongly urge everyone to come and see for themselves. You can't appreciate it unless you're here yourself.
Beautiful. Hello, my name is Dr. Alan Mazurek. I'm here with American Friends for a Safe Israel, AFSI, which is an organization dedicated to the protection and safety of Am Yisrael, of Eretz Israel, the land of Israel, the state of Israel. And we're here with almost 40 people from all across the United States, from sea to shining sea, actually, from Oregon to New York and all the states in between. And we are pleased and proud to be here in our homeland, in our Holy Land, to be in front of the Kotel, to be in front of the retaining wall near the Har HaBayit. We just attempted to climb the ramp to the Har HaBayit to pray at our holiest site, and unfortunately we were stopped by Israeli soldiers who were again doing their job and did not allow us to go forward, but we were able to say some psalms, some Tehillim, and pray for the day when all of Am Yisrael will once again be able to rise up to the Har HaBayit and build the Beit HaMikdash and celebrate all of our Chagim B'Shalom. We are pleased to be all over the country. We're going to go to Gaza. We've already been in the Shomron and have spent the night in Eshel Shomron Hotel in Ariel, despite the fact that there was a terrorist attack 2 days before that actually had murdered 3 people. We were not afraid to stay there. We must tell you that the hotel is lovely and that more should go stay there. We feel completely safe. I can ask the group, do you feel safe?
Absolutely.
Everyone felt completely safe. And after being in the Shomron and visiting a variety of different communities in the Shomron, we are going to spend a few days in Yerushalayim, and then we'll be going on to Hebron. And most people have been afraid to go to Hebron, but we must tell you that our group, like many others, is very happy and proud to go to Hebron, especially this Shabbat, the Shabbat Parshat Chayei Sarah, where we will be celebrating with thousands of Jews in the Marat HaMachpelah, celebrating in Hebron the birthplace of the Jewish people in some way, because that is the place where David HaMelech first established his monarchy in Israel, in Hebron, before he moved it to Yerushalayim. Chayei Sarah is the parsha where Abraham Avinu bought the Marat HaMachpelah for the burial of his beloved wife Sarah and for the avot of the Jewish people. This is our land. Hebron is ours. Marat HaMachpelah is ours. And we feel completely secure and safe and proud to be here with our brothers and sisters in Eretz Israel during this difficult time. We thank you for allowing us to be here. We thank you for joining us, and we invite all of our friends, our family, our neighbors throughout the world, specifically the United States and Europe, South America, to come and join us here in Eretz Israel. Thank you very much.
But everything's fine. I went into your room, Anshik, and I went into your room and I looked.
We thought you abandoned us. We thought you left, no longer liking us.
What's that?
Everyone, let's go and take a seat downstairs. We're going to get
an answering machine or...
Oh, you know what?
Lamata.
Yeah, the cell phone, you have to use the first two digits, but I'll try to call her at home. You know, well, yeah, I think you have to go up to
Interesting for us to do since the TV
One more
crew is
time.
here.
It is over it seems there are men over there who are taking blood from people.
Tell what they told you, and then we can...
You know, it depends if you're the type of person who needs to rest and relax after you give blood, then if you don't
have to relax. I'll be back. What is it?
They take care of you quickly.
He apparently is.
It doesn't take blood.
You have to drink a lot.
We should let everyone identify themselves.
I think he's taking this for the government.
Should we wave?
For the government.
Like you said, when we come back.
who is a great friend and one of the fighters of Yerushalayim HaShlema. It's always a pleasure to bring groups to Beit Orot, and Chaim will explain what is happening here in Beit Orot and in the rest of the reclamation of Yerushalayim.
Shalom. First of all, I want to thank Helen Friedman and Bruce Rudolph and all the AFSI people for being such loyal supporters of Eretz Israel, for coming so often and for being just always there, and whenever there's a need to stand up for Israel, they are there. And I think certainly on film and on video and in public, and here on Haradat Tim, I think we've got to give them the credit where credit's due, and kol hakavod. Now, for those of you that are familiar with the Kabbalah, with the Jewish mysticism, there's the Galui and there's the Nistar, right? There's the revealed Kabbalah and there's the hidden Kabbalah. Today, we're going to have a bit of that and a bit of this. A bit of this and a bit of that. The revealed stuff that I'm going to show you today, I'm going to let them film. There's certain stuff that I'm going to show you today that I'm going to ask them not to film, because, as you'll understand, if we get there, if we have time to go there, you'll see that these are things that can't be publicized, even through a friendly camera. So we're going to start with the Galui now, with the revealed stuff, and hopefully, and I will welcome Judy Balin, Judy Lash Balin also. And I see Judy leads the introduction. Judy is a great friend of Yerushalayim also, and a fighter for Yerushalayim, and of Beit Orot, and of our other organizations also. So it goes like this. So before I forget, no, small ones. And sorry, I didn't introduce Shlomo Zwickler also, who is the Beit Orot Director of Development. Another fighter for Yerushalayim. We, for the last 2 years, we've been in the throes of a war, what we prefer to call the Oslo War. And this war has had many ramifications. Obviously, the most significant of them being the loss of over 600 Jewish lives and the destruction of thousands of other Jewish lives, of people that have been wounded and maimed. And I don't know if you went to visit anybody on this trip, but I'm sure you're following, you've met people and you've seen, and it's just it's unforgivable what's gone on here as a result of the Oslo Accords. And I think that the most immediate answer to this war situation is to destroy the terror. סליחה, תעשה לי טובה שישמרו קצת השקט שם. No. To bash them up. We've got to destroy them. President Bush knows it. We know it, but unfortunately up to now we've had some problems carrying it out fully. Baruch Hashem, our army and our secret service and our internal security and police have done a wonderful job, and they work very hard, but we haven't done enough. That's in the short term. But in the medium to long term, we need to find solutions that will take away this threat. Now, as many of you might know, that I work very closely with Member of Knesset Benny Elon, and he says, which is, you can judge for yourself, that the way to solve this problem is to take the refugees, to take all the terrorists, and to move them over to Jordan, which is really the Palestinian state. We can discuss it later if you want, but that's not the topic of discussion, but I've got good answers for that also. So that's a medium to long-term solution.
Well, we don't want them either. So.
The other, more immediate solution that will help us bring about a situation where the Arabs and the rest of the world will understand that Eretz Israel belongs to Am Israel, is that we need to create facts on the ground. We need to strengthen the Jewish presence, dafka in the places that are contested. Right? That's very important. Dafka in the places that they call disputed, right? Or occupied, or conquered, or any of the other terminology that they use. And where you are right now, according to the American government, let's forget about the Arabs for a minute. According to the American government, we are considered illegal settlers here, and we're considered in an occupied territory that is not recognized today by the American government, even though they've passed a law about it, and they've passed a resolution recently about Eastern Jerusalem being part of the capital of Israel. De facto, and in some cases in law, the American government doesn't recognize it. The British government takes it one step further. I have a letter in my office to attest to that, and they consider us criminals, international criminals, because according to international law, according to the British government, if you conquer territory, it is forbidden by the Geneva Convention to move your population into that conquered territory, and if you do it, you're considered an international criminal. So that's summing up what our friends say about it.
What about our enemies?
Now, the Arab world and the so-called Palestinians, they obviously are saying that this area is Palestinian. It always has been. Jesus was a Palestinian.
No, he
you know
wasn't.
that?
He was Jewish.
I'm saying what they say. They say that we never had a temple either.
Right. In fact, we don't exist.
Right, well, but I'm trying not to be ironic. I'm actually trying to be very factual here, because it's more sad than it is funny, and we have to have a real response to this. And that's certainly the area of Yerushalayim, and I'm going to focus now specifically on Jerusalem and Yerushalayim, that Yerushalayim is Palestinian. It will be the capital of the Palestinian state. That's what they claim, and that's what many people support, including up to President Bush, and I don't know how President Bush holds on this situation, but certainly President Clinton and Prime Minister Barak and Foreign Minister Perez, and certainly the Arab world and the European world support a Palestinian state with its capital in Jerusalem. Notice I didn't say its capital in East Jerusalem, I said its capital in Jerusalem, because they also believe that Western Jerusalem belongs to them, the Palestinians, and but in the meantime they are going for East or Eastern Yerushalayim, as we like to call it. Now, let us first understand, I want you to understand, we're going to spend about 10 or 20 minutes, very briefly, before we carry on, to understand the theory behind this, and I'm going to show you some maps, because it's important that you understand the geography, the strategy, as well as the politics. Once we go around, I think you'll appreciate it much better. So let's see what substance there is in this so-called Palestinian claim, right? And let's see what the threats are and how we're dealing with it. Number one, there's some of you that will remember, there's some of you that read about it. In 1948, in the War of Independence, Jordan conquered Eastern Jerusalem, including the Old City. Right? For the first time in 2,000 years, all the Jews had to leave the old city, and not only the old city, but the area surrounding the old city, as we'll see in a minute. And in effect, Jordan took over and annexed all of eastern Jerusalem and all of Judea and Samaria, right? And they called it Transjordan, or it became part of their state. And that was the situation physically in Eretz Israel. If you would come to the border of the old city, to Jaffa Gate, that was the border of the state of Israel. Judy, you should go after to keep going with this thing. That was the border of the state of Israel, right over here. And all of this yellow that you see over here, this became Jordan. That was Jordan, right? Now, how many, you all experts here, so I know you'll have the answer, but how many countries recognize this Jordan state? Who were they?
Yours?
No, not mine.
Jordan, sorry.
No, I'm South African originally.
Great Britain.
Right, Great Britain and Pakistan. So pay attention, only 2 countries in the whole world recognize this annexation, and not the United States, not Russia, not the United Nations, right? Which means that they were a conquering country on a mandated area that was given over to Israel, to the state of Israel. That's very important, because if you think about it, they call this area the occupied territories, the Palestinian occupied territories. The Jordanians, by international law, never held that territory, and certainly not the Palestinians. So even according to international law, this does not belong to the Palestinians or to the Jordanians. By the way, the Jordanians relinquished any right that they had to this area in the 80s. King Hussein of Jordan officially relinquished his claim. So that's another thing to remember. So what happened in 1948 is that we lost this area. Now, most of you know that we lost Judea and Samaria, and it was in the hands of the Jordanians until 1967. What you should also know is this area here, right, and the old city, all this area around the old city, except for an island in Mount Scopus, we also lost to the Jordanians. And that, as you'll see today, is part of the problem that we have today. Now, in 1967 was the Six-Day War, and in the Six-Day War, Baruch Hashem, we liberated much more than we even intended doing, including the Golan Heights, the Sinai, Judea and Samaria, Yudav Shomron, and Eastern Yerushalayim. And this was a very, very important and phenomenal success and victory. And as a result, new borders of Jerusalem were drawn up, which we call liberated Jerusalem. And those borders look like this. I'm just going to hold it up here. Can you all see? These are the modern-day borders of Yerushalayim. Up to the north is Ramallah, to the south is Bethlehem. Inside the red dotted lines is Western Jerusalem, which was Yerushalayim between 1948 and 1967. And the area between the red dotted lines and the black lines, right, this area over here, is liberated Eastern Jerusalem. Notice that it's not only east of Yerushalayim, it's also north, all this area north, and it's also south and west, right? But it was generically known, if you wish, as East Jerusalem, right? That's why we prefer to call it Eastern Yerushalayim. It's the eastern part of the city. Now, what you can see from this map, mostly this demographic map, is what was the yellow areas, which is where the Arabs live today in Yerushalayim, and the dark blue areas where the Jews live. Now, first of all, you now know geographically what Eastern Jerusalem is, right? It starts up here, all this area over here, goes through Ramot Eshkol, Neve Yaakov, Pisgat Ze'ev, round past the old city, the Mount of Olives, down to East Talpiot, all the way to Har Choman Gilo. That's Eastern Yerushalayim. That's liberated Jerusalem. The amount of, anybody got an idea how many Jews live in this so-called Arab East Jerusalem? No, there are only about 650,000 Jews living in all of Yerushalayim. 650,000 people, including Arabs and Christians that live in all of Yerushalayim.
These Jews about 3,000?
How many?
3,000.
No, I'm asking in the whole area of liberated Jerusalem, how many Jews live in it?
More than 10,000.
Say again?
More than
180,000.
More than 10,000.
More than 10,000. Truth is, most of us didn't know unless somebody told us. The truth is there are about 200,000. Almost half of the population of Yerushalayim lives in eastern Yerushalayim. And the other interesting fact is there are about 200,000 Arabs living there too. So when you switch on your CNN and they tell you that it's Arab East Jerusalem, or traditionally Arab East Jerusalem, that's simply a distortion of the truth. And the fact is that if you look in this area, you've got large neighborhoods. Neve Yaakov and Pisgat Za'ed together have over 60,000 people living there. And Gilo is another 30,000, and East Talpiot is another 30 or 40,000, and Ramot Eshkol and Ramot alone is another 60. You're talking about over 200,000 Jews living there. That is the dark blue areas. Where is our Achilles heel? Where's the problem? You can see it graphically. The problem is over here, right? If yellow represents Arab presence and blue represents Jewish presence, right? Right over here is where we have our problem. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is historic biblical Jerusalem. That's the point. The point is that all of this area is liberated, it's true, and it's now part of Jerusalem's borders, and we're not going to give up on it. But this is biblical Jerusalem. This is the Yerushalayim that is mentioned nearly 700 times in the Torah, in the Bible, in the Tanakh. This is the Yerushalayim where the temple is, or was. This is Yerushalayim of our history, and this Yerushalayim, and this is where Alan is correct, in this Yerushalayim, which is biblical Jerusalem, there are only about 3,000 Jews living. Dafka, in the most important Jewish real estate asset, real estate treasure, this is where we have a paucity of Jews, where we have almost no Jews living. And most of those 3,000, to answer an anticipated question from Bruce, and most of those 3,000 live in the Old City, in the Jewish quarter. Right? Beiderot, I'm happy to tell you, probably is the largest Jewish presence in Eastern Jerusalem, what I call the inner core of Eastern Jerusalem. Right? We have maybe 100, close to 120 or 150 people living and working here. And then you have the city of David. Also outside there, about 22 families living in the city of David in Ir David. Did you visit there?
No.
Not this time. Okay. Outside of the old city, we have a big problem of population. Despite the fact that you're sitting now on the Mount of Olives. And the Mount of Olives is the second holiest place in Yerushalayim, after Har HaBayit, after the Temple Mount. And we have 300,000 Jews on the Mount of Olives. The problem is that they're all underground. And on top of the Mount of Olives, we have 100 or 150 live Jews. Beiderot, where you are now, which is the Yeshiva and Reclamation Organization, is the first live Jewish presence on the Mount of Olives in 2,000 years. So, we have a problem, and that is over here we have yellow, and what color do we need? Blue. Blue, right.
How many Arabs live in the pink area, in the area that we're talking about now?
This area over here?
Yeah.
It's difficult to know. I try to find out, but they're probably about, I'd say, between 50 and 100,000.
Has anybody moved in Bachar Tzikim yet?
No, we're going there now. We're going to go, that's going to be our first stop. But they were supposed to have moved in. They were supposed to have moved in on Sukkot. But you know how it is with contractors, doesn't always get finished on time. Yes, Malay. We're going to go there, yes. Hopefully.
You want to buy one?
Wait till you see this.
Yes, we're going to be at Addis. Okay, that's why I want to move quickly if possible, so we can get all this in and then really get to see the stuff. Now, that was the demographic picture. The demographic picture is good, relatively good, when we look at all of Yerushalayim, of Eastern Yerushalayim. When we look at the inner core of Eastern Jerusalem, we have a big demographic problem. Now, let's look what Oslo did to Yerushalayim. We know that Oslo, and in the time of Rabin, they gave away 40 or 49 or 40+% of Judea and Samaria to Palestinian control, to what they call the Palestinian Authority. And areas in Judea and Samaria were divided up into three areas. Area A, Area B, and Area C. Area A means Arafat, right?
A for Arafat.
Right, A for Arafat, full Palestinian control. Area B means Palestinian civilian control and Israeli security control. And Area C is full Jewish control, full Israeli control, which is the Yeshuvim, Beit El, Shiloh, Efrat, not Hebron. Hebron had its own status called H, and I'm sure you'll hear more about that on Shabbat. But in the rest of Yehuda Shomron is area A, B, and C. What they did to Yerushalayim is that they almost completely surrounded Yerushalayim by areas A and B. Here you can see on the north, on the top in Ramallah, area A is purple. Ramallah is a big town over here. Area B is the red area over here, right? And area A is Bethlehem over here. So if you think about it, what chance does Yerushalayim have to expand its borders, right? Like any major capital of the world expands, there's a population expansion. Over here, the chances of us expanding anywhere are very, very small, number one. And number two, the corollary of that is that the chances of us being, God forbid, surrounded by a hostile Palestinian state in our capital is very high. And we know what happened in July of 2000, right, where with the so-called Camp David Accords or the Camp David discussions. In the Camp David discussions, President Clinton and Prime Minister Barak and Balin and Perez, etc., offered the following to Arafat. So that let's see it on a map, right? Just north of here, from here, all of this area, including the white and the red, excluding Givat Ze'ev, all of this, all of this, all of this, except for Ma'ale Adumim, all of the area below here, and all of this area, all of this would have become a Palestinian state. 96% of Judea and Samaria, but all of the area surrounding Yerushalayim. Now you think that's bad, right? In addition to that, they offered them all the pink areas inside Jerusalem, which are the Arab populated neighborhoods of Jerusalem, including Har HaBayit, the Temple Mount.
And he said no.
And he said no.
Baruch Hashem hardened his heart. Hashem hardened his heart.
Hashem hardened his heart.
Tell me the answer.
I see he hardened.
Now we understand, you have to understand the extent of where we nearly came to. Of where we nearly came to. And you should know that the present, you've been following what's happening on the news yesterday and today. The government has broken down, the unity government has broken down, and Ben Eliezer stands a good chance of losing the leadership of the Labour Party, and either Chaim Ramon or Amram Mitzna, the other two candidates, stand a good chance of winning, right? Both Chaim Ramon and Amram Mitzna are to the left of Ehud Barak, right? Which means, and Amram Mitzna has already said it, he would give away this area.
He would give away what?
This area. In other words, he would uphold what they call the Clinton plan. The Clinton plan is really the Yossi Beilin plan that went through the White House and was recycled back through Clinton. So we have to understand, as I mentioned earlier, the threats facing Yerushalayim. Now, having understood that, and I don't want to make you too depressed, there's also a positive side to it. The positive side to it is that Ehud Barak was kicked out of power, and Arik Sharon is in power now, and basically both Arik Sharon and or Bibi Netanyahu will be in power in the next elections. Whether it's if it's a narrow government, it will be Sharon until the next elections. If they have elections soon, it will be either Sharon or Bibi. But both of them, we know, are committed to a united Jerusalem. Now that's very important on a political level, right? But we have to remember that it's not enough to get up and to stand in demonstrations and to throw out the famous cliches of we want a united Jerusalem, you know, the undivided eternal capital of the state of Israel. That is not enough, right? What we need to do is create facts on the ground. And where you are now, right now, is one of those bigger facts on the ground. Now, creating facts on the ground in and of itself is very, very important, with the aim ultimately of asserting full Israeli Jewish sovereignty in all parts of Yerushalayim, and how much more so in the inner core of Eastern Jerusalem, biblical, historical Yerushalayim. The question is, how do we do that? And how do we do it so that we attain maximum impact and effect? Right? Because I could say to you, what we need to do is we need to bring, you mentioned 500,000 people to Eastern Yerushalayim. Halavai, let's all come here, pitch tents, and we've taken over Yerushalayim and we've redeemed Eastern Jerusalem. At the moment, that's not so realistic, although you never know in the Middle East. I had one woman who was not even Jewish, that came to us one day and she said, I want to pitch my tent right over there and I want to make sure that Yerushalayim stays in your hand. And she was dead serious. She probably would have been dead afterwards if she would have done it, but that's why we didn't let her do it, because unfortunately this area hasn't been too safe over the past few years. Beirut has been firebombed over 30 times and shot at a couple of times, but Baruch Hashem recently it's been quiet. Except for Simchat Torah, when some of our guys were walking over there and they got stoned by school kids and who ran back into the school. And the rule is in Israel, and generally in Yerushalayim in particular, the police do not go into schools. As it happened in Area A, they never went into Area A either in the beginning of this Oslo war, but things can change. Nevertheless, what we need to do is we need to bring a strong Jewish presence into this area, and it's done by buying up and by populating locations throughout the area of the inner core of Eastern Jerusalem. Any questions up to now? Charlotte.
You said that Netanyahu and Sharon both are committed to United Jerusalem. How do you know you can rely on their commitments? Those commitments have been changing so often once they are there to carry it out.
You're right. I don't know for sure, and I probably believe Sharon more than I believe Bibi. But I think my gut feeling is that both of them are committed not to divide up Jerusalem. And you have to. I heard it personally from Sharon. We were in his office, and besides the fact that he bought a house in the Muslim quarter of the old city many years ago, that kind of shows his commitment too. But my gut feeling is that he's committed, and the country is committed not to dividing up Jerusalem. So I want to lead you over to.
Well, I've got a question. You're talking about buying enough land in East Jerusalem. Are Arabs willing to sell?
Aha, that's a good question. We're going to talk about that as we travel, because there's a lot that I need to tell you. Okay. Now, the point is like this. Arabs are willing to sell. And not only are they willing to sell, but they're willing to sell at cheaper prices than they would have sold 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago. And that is for two reasons. One is that Arafat is not as powerful as he used to be. And the threat of the Palestinian Authority murdering you if you sell land to Jews is less. Number two...
Still happening though.
That's still happening. Okay? I have an answer to that. Number two, and that is the economic situation of the Arab Palestinians today is, in other words, those of Eastern Yerushalayim and Yehuda v'Shomron is categorically much worse than it used to be, and they need money. And I know that personally. They've approached us. Their sons have got married. They, owe debts, etc., etc., and they want to offload assets, and they're willing to do that at lower prices than they would have done it years ago. It's interesting how it worked, because before the first Intifada, before the Oslo Accords, we could buy it at reasonable prices, quite expensive.
What's
when
reasonable?
It depends where.
Per dunam.
It depends. If it's built, not built. I don't want to get into that now. We can get into it a bit later. When after the Oslo Accords and the death sentence, then it went up, tripled. The prices tripled, and now they've gone down to reasonably low levels, depending where you buy. That's the second reason that we can buy today. The third reason, and I'll just hint to that, is that the Arabs don't always sell to Jews, but it lands up in the hands of the Jews.
Third party.
So, nevertheless, we have ways of getting these properties into our hands. Now, the point that I want to make over here, and I'm going to end up here. We'll have a very quick look into Beirut, and then we'll move on. The point I want to make is the following. We want to impact Yerushalayim in a large way, right? We want to be able to bring in tens of thousands of Jews to live permanently in these areas. That is the way that you possess it and that you make sure it belongs to us. Right? Possession is 9/10 of the law. Right? Now the question is, how do you do it? In the old city, it's critical that we buy properties there, because it's the inner part of the heart. We're in the heart, that's the inner part of the inner chamber of the heart. The problem with the old city, as you can see over here, this is the old city. It's one of the most densely populated areas in the world. Anybody know how many people live in the old city altogether?
25,000.
Sorry?
25,000.
No? 40,000.
40,000 in an area less than 1 square mile, right? Yeah, half a square mile even. It's very densely populated, and as I mentioned, out of those, less than 3,000 of them are Jewish. 8.5% of the whole of the old city is populated by Jews. It's very difficult to have a big impact in the old city. There, it's hand-to-hand combat. To buy a house there, to move into another room, and that's what organizations like Ateret Kohanim, I'm sure you're familiar with, are doing. They're there, they've got 60 families living, or 70 families living in the Muslim quarter of the old city, the old Jewish quarter, or the Kotel quarter, right? Which is very important. What we want to do outside of the old city, and in this area over here, which is the area you're in, is we want to build neighborhoods. We want to be able to bring in thousands of people. And the truth is, you can't do it in the old city because physically, legally, commercially, it's impossible, right, in the short term. But here, in Beit Orot, we're sitting on 12 dunam of land, which is about 4 acres. Now, in Back Lawrence, 4 acres is one house, right? In Yerushalayim, 4 acres is 300 apartments, right? Or 250 apartments. And that's how we can bring in 1,000 or 2,000 people to move in this neighborhood within 2 years. And that's by buying up larger areas of land. So what we've done is we've identified areas of land in the eastern part in the inner core of eastern Jerusalem that are outside of the old city, but east of road number 1. This is western Jerusalem. This is Mea Sharim over here. This is town and the King David Hotel area. This is the old city over here. This area over here is the inner core of eastern Jerusalem, outside of the old city. It is in this area that we want to build up a large Jewish presence by building neighborhoods, right? And therefore, when we buy properties strategically. If somebody comes up to us and says to us, I have a house over here for you, right? The guy's willing to sell it for $100,000. It's worth $300,000. We won't necessarily buy it, because what we want to do is we want to be able to buy in areas where we can build a strong Jewish presence, not a single house here and a single house there. And the way we've done it is by identifying different areas that we can build on. Now, for example, this is not exact because the map's broken a little bit, but maybe we can just move it up a little bit, like that. That's better. Okay, this is better. Now, this is the situation that existed until a few years ago in eastern Yerushalayim. Here is the old city. This is the area around the old city. The blue areas are existing Jewish projects or Jewish presence in this area. So that it's not completely lost, because we know that there are many possibilities for development in this area. Just for example, this is Musrara, the Musrara neighborhood. These are the new hotels. This is the Shimon HaTzadik neighborhood. Here's the Mishmar HaGvul headquarters. Here's Dr. Moskowitz's Shefer Hotel. Here is government offices. Here's the Tabachnik Park and Hebrew University. Here's Beit Orot. And the other areas, here's the Rockefeller Museum. There's the City of David. Here's Ma'aleh Zetim over here. Here's the cemetery. In other words, it's not that there are no Jews or there's no Jewish presence over here, but there's a very small live Jewish presence. And our aim is to build on these presences of these islands, if you wish, of Jewish ownership, to build on them and to expand them. And many of the properties that the projects that we're involved with now in Beit Orot and in Uvnei Yerushalayim, which is the organization that carries out the acquisitions, many of them are concentrated on building a large Jewish presence in this area. Not only, by the way, not only housing, not only residential, but also parks. Because parks are what connect between neighborhoods. What we really want is, if we said this is road number 1, right, which separates east from west, what we really want is, throughout this area, we want a belt, a continuous Jewish belt of live Jewish presence in the area. If we can have that, if we can achieve that, then we will impact. Because then, even if we don't have, and Bruce's question was in place, right, how are you going to bring 50,000 Jews to live in this area? You don't need it in the beginning. If we can have a Jewish belt of Jews throughout this area, a continuous Jewish belt of neighborhoods, we have already created irrevocable facts on the ground, and we will have built what we call the Jewish belts. the impact, right, like a nuclear bomb, its impact is much bigger than its actual, where it actually blows up. Lahavdil, right? But the impact of our projects outside of the old city will completely envelop the area around the old city and turn effectively Eastern Jerusalem into an integral part of Yerushalayim, a united Jerusalem. That's the aim, right? And we're working on it, Baruch Hashem, rather successfully. Not enough, I admit, we should do more, we can do more. It's always an issue of money, of legal issues, of political issues, but we're working very, very hard to succeed in this, and Baruch Hashem, we have succeeded, and you will see some projects today, what our organization has been involved with, and other organizations also, like Ateret Kohanim and Dr. Moskowitz himself, and we'll see the City of David too. So, to sum up, the answer to terror in the short term is destroying it. In the medium long term is to build and to increase a Jewish presence. In Yerushalayim, the answer to the danger of dividing up Yerushalayim is to make sure politically we don't lose it, and to create real facts on the ground throughout the eastern part of the city, so that we will have an irrevocable presence in this area. Any questions?
Two questions. Actually, one question and then one comment. What is to stop the government from doing what it did at Gilad Farms?
First of all, that's a good question. First of all, Jerusalem, Eastern Jerusalem, is legally a part of the State of Israel, right? So it was annexed in 1981, just like the Golan Heights was, the Jerusalem Law of 1980 or 1981, right? So here, if I buy a property, I can get building rights on that property and build and live there. So, and that we're very careful to work according to the law. And in fact, as you'll hear later on, we are very successful in evicting Arabs because they broke the law. And we get them out through the courts, which we cannot accuse of being right-wing, right? So therefore, the status of Yerushalayim is different from Gilad Farms.
And the follow-up is, this is a no-brainer. This is a real estate syndication deal.
That's correct.
Because I think the easiest way to show it to investors is that prices have gone down, just like what happens sometimes in the States. You create a syndication where everyone understands that there's a potential for a huge upside, which is what we see at Mamila. And it would almost seem, as I say, a no-brainer.
Well, actually,
could you do a syndication of this size?
It really is for people who would get involved with your program of expansion and creating the neighborhoods. This is an investment, right? This is not giving a donation to Beit Road. This is an investment.
That's what I'm saying.
That
Even
pay
if the
off
people
very
don't want to come here
handsomely.
and live,
Yes.
it's a syndication. You buy a dunam for $100,000, and in 2-3 years, when the economy gets better and things stabilize in some way, shape, or form, just by the mass of what you do. I mean, we do that all the time.
What's your name?
Jack Berger. Your guys come and see me all the time.
Not me. Are you from Chicago?
Chicago.
I met you. I met you at the FC conference 2 years ago.
Yes.
But I can see you know what you're talking about.
The famous Chicago.
Yes. So your name precedes you, but it's a very good question. So to answer it, first of all, you're 100% right. A few years ago, when my background is also in real estate before I joined this organization, and while working with Rabbeinu Elon, I realized that it would be a mistake to continue to only raise donation money to redeem properties. For two reasons. A, people give less when they donate, and B, because there are real commercial opportunities here. So therefore, we decided, he was a bit skeptical, and I took him to New York and introduced him to a few stockbrokers and a few business people who said, well, if you do this, I'm willing to invest. And once he felt more comfortable about it, we took it further. And as of today, we have a few syndicates already set up. The way that we do it, there are two types. There are syndicates that buy one property and own it, 2 or 3 guys, right? Those are the less expensive properties. A property like Shimon HaTzadik, which we're in the process of buying, is a purchase price, including evacuation, of $7 million. There, we've set up a whole company, an offshore company. I don't want to go into too many details, but all legal. Yeah. But we've set it up, and we have already over $5 million of committed money until we sign the contract, and we're in the process of raising the remainder
You
of
have
the
to
money.
understand the timing for this is absolutely perfect, because there isn't a Jew who has an account at Morgan Stanley or Merrill Lynch that hasn't lost their ass. And all I know is in Chicago, I get calls every single day, do you have anything to buy in real estate? I want something that's real. I don't want to put my money in the stock market ever again.
One other reason why I'm successful, I believe, in what we're doing, I just had a meeting yesterday to buy a house where the guys decided to go in, is that I believe in full disclosure. And that's very important for me, is that when I bring in an investor, I tell him I have got a waiver this size, right? And all the risks have to be very clear, because you're right, it is a no-brainer, but it's not so simple, because you have Arab Salam. So, once again, Jack, please. So the fact is that the government is 100% behind us, but they are limited in where they can help us. The true test, and we haven't reached that point yet, the true test will be when we buy the properties, when we evacuate the squatters and the undesirable residents, and when we want to build, that we get the maximum building rights.
And one other thing, just because I'm on this rule.
We must go. Yeah.
Okay. You know what tax increment financing is? It's called a TIF. One of the ways you can get the government to even be more explicit is that I'm sure these properties are taxed at a certain level.
Right.
What they do in Chicago is you create a TIF district, so that there's whatever the increment is has to stay in that area, and also repay the government for the infrastructure that they're developing in underdeveloped neighborhoods. It's a really
Very
cute little...
interesting point. I want to talk to you about it.
We will talk more about it, yeah.
Because there are other tax issues. You should know that as I told you, I was in real estate before, in an average real estate acquisition in Israel, 60% of the price of the real estate goes to the government. It's either betterment taxes, VAT, acquisition tax, income tax, etc. 60%. Anyhow, so I really want to move now, because our aim is to walk around, and we've stayed here long enough. But I'm hoping that you've got your maps now. You can see on both sides of your maps where we are, right? Ask me. And I think you've got an idea what we're trying to do in Yerushalayim. Where we're going to go now is to Ma'aleh HaZitim, which is the Arab version of Ma'aleh HaZitim, is called Ras El Amud. You can see it on your map. Over here.
Because the sun went behind the clouds, that's why.
Over here, if you look on your map, just by through one, just at the bottom of the Mount of Olives. You see over here, there's a blue area, that's the cemetery, and then there's a small area over here, a blue area, that's where we're going to now. That's called Ma'aleh HaZitim. It's one of the blue blurbs. In the If you see, I just want to show you a very interesting thing. First of all, you can see from here, if I can, the old city. Right, the area of the old city, we see really the northeastern area of the old city, which is what they call the Muslim Quarter today. And at the background, you can see the King David Hotel sticking out there, and a couple of other hotels, the plaza to the right. Behind that is your hotel. Over to the foreground on the right-hand side is an area called Wadi Joz, which is the valley of Yehoshaphat, and just behind that to the right is the Shimon HaTzadik neighborhood. Here on this side is Har HaZitim, the Mount of Olives, and beyond this hill is a cemetery. And here you can see the strategic importance of having a Jewish presence in this area. In the Six-Day War, it was from here that the Israeli army went when they conquered the old city, because without holding on to Mount of Olives, there's no way that they could have conquered the old city. There were snipers and Jordanian artillery on this mountain, and they were just hammering the paratroopers and the Israeli soldiers down on the bottom. They came up here, and they, in fact, where Beit HaRod was part of one of the areas where they destroyed the artillery and defeated the enemy. And from here, they went down to that road over there that you see there, and into Lions Gate, and liberated Yerushalayim. One of the founders of Beit HaRod, this Beit HaRod is the Hesder Yeshiva, yeshiva that does army service as well as learning. And there are two founders of Beit HaRod. The one, as I mentioned earlier, was Beni Elon, Rav Beni Elon, who was the first Rosh Yeshiva. And together with him was Hanan Porat, who used to be a member of Knesset for many years, 20 years, and resigned recently. And he was a paratrooper in 1967 and fought right over here for liberating Yerushalayim, and then went on as a paratrooper to liberate Yerushalayim. So this was a very special area for him. And together they set up this Hezir Yeshiva. At the time, I think there were 20 students. And Baruch Hashem, today we have well over 100 students living and learning in this area. So,
can I ask you, it seems to me the last time I was here, that brand new addition on the Arab house wasn't there, and some of these others. There's so much illegal Arab building here. How does the government deal with that? How do you deal with that?
Okay, so Helen brought up a very important point, and that is the point of illegal Arab building. There are over 10,000 illegally built Arab units in Eastern Jerusalem. 10,000. And you just need to look over here, and you can see additions in almost every house over here, including that one you're right, Helen. We photographed it, we sent it into City Hall. City Hall deals with about 1% of illegal building per year in Arab East Jerusalem. In Jewish Jerusalem, if you had to build a balcony that was not exactly kosher, it's destroyed, you fined, whatever. 1% gets, and even that 1%, they've got to do it mamash to take the tea.
Weren't you prevented from having a roof?
So just to give you an example,
so
this hall that you were sitting in used to be a social hall. We used to bring 50,000 people a year here for weddings and bar mitzvahs and other things. And the Marriott's people in the city hall sued us, and we were forced to take down a tent, right? That's where they put their energy. Instead of breaking down all the illegal buildings that they're building, our tent had to be broken down. Isn't that a bit reminiscent of the Gilad Farm syndrome? Right? That instead of evacuating 10,000 illegally built homes and buildings in Eastern Jerusalem and in Yehuda Shomron, they worry about the few guys that are living in a privately owned Gilad Farm.
That's the Capo syndrome?
I don't know what it is, maybe.
But it's when we say
okay, let's get going, guys. We've got to get to Malay Azistin. Let's please.
The way that because we're having something, we're going to raise it a lot of this.
Like 10 years ago, and 5 years ago, at September 97, we came here first time. We settled down in a big house that we already destroyed. That was right in the corner of the wall. Now you cannot see any evidence of this house that was here. We lived here in this house for 3 years, and since then. Since we took it down, we destroyed it, we passed to the caravans. You can see here at the left the caravans. Today we are living here 3 families, and regarding the place where we are, of course, everybody can recognize Temple Mount, the old city, the Jewish quarter, right opposite us. And if you will turn over, you will see behind of us, this is Abu Dis and Azariah, right there. Right to this where I'm fingering, this is Abu Dis, and you can see from here. We will go to the other side. You will see exactly where the parliament of the Palestinian Authority is already existed, and we can see it right from here. And this is maybe the explain why we came here before going, for example, to Abu Dis, because in Abu Dis also we have a land belong to Jews. But before going there, we decided to go and to do some step forward in this area. And the reason is, at 1994, Yossi Beilin and Abu Mazen came up with a program that was, the name of the program is on behalf of their name. It's called Abu Mazen Beilin program. The idea behind of it is to give Arabs, every Arab, the option to come to the Al-Aqsa, the mosque, without passing in any Jewish neighborhood or in any Israeli checkpoint. The only way to do it is using the road that you came up now, Mount of Olives. This is the old way to Jericho. If you will continue with the road, you will get to Ma'ale Adumim, then
to Jericho, and if you will continue, you will get to Rabat Amon in Jordan, and from there everything is open. The meaning is Arabs from Qatar, from Kuwait, from Saudi Arabia, Iraq and Iran, from everywhere, they thought they would come to Al-Aqsa to pray without passing in the Jewish area. In order to stop this idea or to avoid it, we came here, and the idea was just that together with the Jewish cemeteries that we can see it right here, the oldest one, the biggest one, the most important cemetery for the Jewish nation. People that buried here is the Or HaChaim, the Rashash, the Ger Rebbe, Menachem Begin, Zvulun Ammer, Eliezer Ben Yehuda, many, Rav Kook, Rav Goren, everybody. I'm not talking about the days of the first temple and the second temple. All the people, all the Kohanim, everybody were buried in the Mount Olive. Now, together with the cemetery and where we are now standing, the Jewish neighborhood, we thought this might block this corridor. They call it the corridor between Jericho and Al-Aqsa. Now we can say, we know we succeed, because we know already they are looking for another road, something else, somewhere else to continue with the same idea, but with something else. They are talking now on a road that is right between us and Bet Torot. There is a road that is cutting Mount of Olive to Azaria and Abu Dis. Now they are thinking again about the corridor, but the corridor will be what they hope north from here. Because of that, now our next step we are thinking to do at the area of this road, the second road. Now, the neighborhood today we are just 3 families, but what we tried and we are doing immediately after we came in to the area we settled down here is to look for other options. And the first things we did, if you see, some of you, there is like a old buildings right here below the cemetery. This is another, there were a ruin, really ruin. When we went in, we found that the floor was made from a tombstones. I think, Aaron, you saw it. I took you there to see.
You showed
the floor was, yeah. If you were here, you saw it last time. It was made from tombstones. Today we have 2 families living there, and we have another step, another thing that we are going to do. We will go to the other side. You will see there is a big police station right close to us. We already bought it, and the idea is to build like the second stage of this neighborhood to continue it to where today is the police station. Now, regarding the neighborhood as it is today, this is a 3. Let's say we have 3 big buildings finished. At the end of the project, we will have here 7. Another 3 right in the corner. Second is where the basketball, and the third one is more further on to the north. But exactly like this one, like this 3, we will have another 3 here. Because of that, people ask me if this is facing Temple Mount. So today it's facing, but in the future, the buildings that will be opposite us, they will block it. So they will be opposite Temple Mount. Now, I asked before if you are going to meet Ehud Olmert, and it's something very, very important, the timing is very important because it's right in these days what I'm going to now to mention. You see this big building with the red roof. The family that's living here, let's say today there are 4 families living there. The father of all the 4 brothers is the uncle of Yasser Arafat. So they are the cousins of Yasser Arafat. Okay? Now, they have a yuchus, so it's not my problem. But why I'm mentioning it? Because look what they are doing. They built illegal buildings, and I can tell you that from the first line, we went to the municipality, we went to the police, we went to everybody, and nobody wants to deal with them. And what is going on, that you can see that in the middle of the second building, you can see at the right, they didn't finish yet. You see the right side of the building, they are still building. We are writing about it to Ehud Olmert, to everybody that you can imagine. Nobody want to deal with them. Now, why I'm telling you that? because unfortunately Ehud Olmert know about it. Now I'm telling it all the time, because if you are going to meet him, if you have a way to contact him, I can help you about that, by the way. We need the help because this is just a symptom of what's happening in all of east of Yerushalayim. You need to understand that we can build another, here at the end of the project we will have here 136 apartments. But it's nothing compared to the illegal buildings that they are building in all east of Yerushalayim. If you want to hear some numbers, at last year, 201, they built a new building. They're not talking about closing something, you know, adding another floor. A new building, we are talking about 800 buildings. So it means you can double it sometimes. Sometimes it's one building with one apartment, but most of them is not just one. It's two floors, 3 floors, and much more. And this, why I'm telling it, because we can do a lot. But if the mayor will not do the minimum that we're asking him, it's not worth nothing. Betorot, Ras El Amud, Silwan, it's nothing compared to what they're doing again, 800 in 1 year. It's more than, let's say it's more than 2 buildings. I'm not talking about closing something new. You see this red roof here? Yeah. I'm not talking about something like that, because the building was here from 1967. They add another, you know, they close the roof and add another floor. I'm not talking about something like that, because if we will count that, we will get to thousands of illegal buildings. I'm talking about new ones like that. This is something that the mayor had to stop from the beginning, and this is something that is for us, for me at least, that I'm living here and I'm working in all east of Yerushalayim. It's like a cancer, exactly. Because the idea of what they are doing, and now today we have already the knowledge that it's not that it's a private campaign of somebody that have the money suddenly. Because for God's sake, suddenly they have the money. All the country is going down, the financial.
Can you get an injunction to stop the building?
The bulldozer is better than an injunction.
If you can what?
Get an injunction.
They can get no illegal way. We went to the court, but again, this is it's a matter of a local court. It's a municipality court. It's not like the Supreme Court. This is a law of the municipality. It's not a law of the country. We call it the law of local court, of the local.
Olmert, is he also the mayor of East Jerusalem?
Of course.
Well, what happens to his constituency that are Jewish if they know about this when they run the ads?
Unfortunately, first it's very difficult to get it to the press, to the media, because it's already for years like that. But at the days of Fredi Kolak, it wasn't at the size like it is today. Today, I'm talking about, again, a cancer. It's a good way to describe it, because they are doing it we have today, as I started before explaining, we have today the knowledge that the Palestinian Authority is behind of it. There is a bank in Saudi Arabia that is sponsoring the people, giving them the loan to build it. And then the bank would get, for example, if they build a building with 6 apartments, the bank will get to insert back 1 apartment from the 5, and then they can sponsor all the time more and more and more. This is what's going on. Let's go to the other side. We will see Abu Dis, and you will see examples of this BP.
My name is Glenn Richter. I live in Manhattan, on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, and this is probably about the 45th trip that I've taken to Israel. And I think the reason that I come back and back again is that I really want to see things for myself. You read about Israel in the newspapers, you watch on television, you listen on the radio, and I think you really just want to be able to judge the situation for itself. That's on the political side. I think on the emotional side, I really feel as a Jew, this is my country. And if it's my country, then I want to be able to be here and experience it and to fully understand what I as a Jew have in relation to Israel.
Did you come with any particular group or for any mission?
Well, I've gone many times with a type of group called Chizuk. And the initial idea had been, when we began 8 years ago, to come and, in a sense, strengthen those who are in Israel. We found out very quickly that instead of strengthening people, they strengthened us. They strengthened us by their own presence in Israel, living through not only good times, of course, but difficult times. And this particular time, this Chizuk trip is under the sponsorship of Americans for a Safe Israel. And we certainly had a remarkable time when we arrived and we were in the lovely seaside town of Netanya. We heard that at the place that we were going to be that evening in the hotel in Ariel, unfortunately, 3 Israeli soldiers had been murdered by a suicide bomber, and we felt impelled to go and to attend the funeral of one of these soldiers. Now, we didn't go to attend funerals. We didn't go to have a downer. We didn't go to be sad. We really came to see and experience the situation for ourselves. But it's very clear that today in Israel, the bad unfortunately comes together with the good. And it's all part of the tapestry of seeing Israel and experiencing Israel. But certainly, the good far outweighs anything that's negative. And you really draw the strength, even from just breathing the air of Israel, from being here, from seeing a lovely Jerusalem, from going into the country, from understanding the relationship of the Bible to our own lives and to what we see, and to see that the Bible comes alive through just through where we're traveling each and every day in Israel.
Where have you visited?
Well, we've gone around many places in Israel. We're standing here, of course, in Jerusalem, opposite the walls of the old city of Jerusalem. But we've traveled from the coastline of Israel, from Netanya, into the what might be called the biblical heartland of Israel. We've traveled through Samaria, the Shomron. We've gone up to Safat, Safed. We've gone up to the Golan Heights. But again, also it's something else personal. My brother decided to make Israel his home here 27 years ago. And it wasn't so easy. He gave up a pretty good life in the United States, a pretty good salary, and certainly today in the United States the salary would be very, very good. And he's worked hard in Israel, and he has a good life in Israel, and he married in Israel, and he has 4 kids in Israel. But you know, these kids are now teenagers. One is studying, in fact, we could just see it in Yeshivat Hakotel. So we sort of like jump over the walls of Jerusalem. I have a nephew who's studying over there. I have 2 other nephews who are studying in high school. I have a niece who's in elementary school. And again, I want to understand the life that my brother has chosen. He chose Israel because he felt more fulfilled as a Jew. And since he felt more fulfilled as a Jew, and he's living here, he says the only way that you can understand it is by coming here. So I come here. I'm drawn over here. I want to understand how he lives. I want to understand how the Jewish people live. I want to understand who I am as a Jew. And I think that's really what draws me back here time and time again.
Do you think a trip like this will help you understand that?
Definitely.
In what way?
I think that each time that I come, it's sort of like, I always tell people it's like a tapestry. And you add additional texture and weaving and understanding and subtext and a deeper level of understanding and an empathy every time I come. And again, as I said, sometimes there's the bad that has to come along with the good. But I would really say that I'm far more inspired than despondent when I come.
Give us an example of that. You said the Shomron. Where did you stay when you were in the Shomron?
Stayed in a hotel called Eshel HaShomron in the town of Ariel. Ariel is fascinating. It's 50% Russian immigrants. Now, my own work before, for the past many years, from the 1960s to the early 1990s, was to help bring Jews out from the former Soviet Union. And to see a town made up, half of which, and it's 18,000 people in the town, it's a city, 18,000 souls in the city, half of whom are those from the Soviet Union. It's inspiring to me. It means it validated all the 25 years, 26 years of work that I put in. Just to go from city to city, from town to town, from community to community, to see people living, despite tragedies, despite the downers, but to see people living their lives in Israel, this to me is the most fulfilling thing of all.
Did you feel in any danger in the Shomron when you were staying there?
Listen, I'm a New Yorker. You know, on September 11th, 2001, I took a trip on the subway downtown for my work. And I thought it would be a very short trip. It turned out to be a very long trip. And when I got out of the subway, I saw the result of the 2 towers that collapsed. You know, as a New Yorker, you understand that not every place is safe in the world, especially where my own neighborhood is concerned. So I'm not particularly concerned about the issue of safety over here. That's it. I thank you very much.
I'm Jack Berger from Chicago, Illinois.
Myron Martin from Chicago also.
And we're having a wonderful time here in Israel.
Did you come with any group?
We came with Americans for a Safe Israel. And it has been a wonderful trip.
Can you tell us a little bit about your reason for coming to Israel?
It was time to take a vacation, and this seemed to be the safest place to be at the time. I come from Chicago. We have 6 million people, lots of shootings every night. We haven't heard any problems here. We've had a wonderful time.
And I came because I wanted to see miracles. I had first been here 41 years ago, and I came back a year and a half ago after some 38 years. And the contrast between then and now is extraordinary. They've built from nothing a modern, beautiful society where I see 5-star hotels. I saw nothing but dirt roads before. A country, a miracle. That's what I wanted to see.
Can you tell us a little bit about the group that you're here with?
We have a very dedicated group of Jews and non-Jews who have come to Israel to support the people of Israel.
The name of the group?
Americans for a Safe Israel.
Tell us a little bit about what they stand for.
They stand for a strong, united Israel in these sometimes difficult times.
And can you tell us why you chose perhaps to go with that group rather than, say, taking a vacation on your own?
Well, the itinerary was exceptional. We were able to go to the Golan. We traveled through the Jordan Valley. Of course, we're here now in East Jerusalem, where we should be. And tomorrow we go to Hebron, of course. Wonderful for the celebration of Chayei Sarah. And after that, we'll then go to the Gaza. And it's proven an exceptional trip. It's a vision of history, a history which we can walk through the Bible.
Now, your trip does not sound like the typical Israel tour. Did you feel in any danger at any time when you were on this trip?
I have not felt any danger whatsoever, and some of these sites, and the biblical sites specifically, have been wonderful. Going to Hebron for Chayei Sarah is going to be an experience I'm sure that we will live with for a long time, and seeing the beaches in Gaza absolutely will be something we look forward to.
For myself, there's been absolutely no apprehension, and in fact, I've had a level of comfort and a level of tranquility, especially here in Jerusalem, which I can honestly say I've never experienced anywhere else.
Do you have any message for the folks back home?
Come to Israel. Have a wonderful time, spend lots of money, and bring lots of gifts to all the people in Israel, including yourself.
Walk the land of the Bible. What you've read in the Bible, you can walk, feel, touch, and experience yourself, and that becomes your reality.
Terrific. Excellent. Terrific. Great.
Beautiful.
facade of a compound where there's a few families, there was an in-house security. Lieutenant Connie has to look after the security booth. So that's a project that we call out to the Jewish world. Give us a security booth. 3 houses need a security booth for the security, for the escort to be in. Cameras, booths, and then of course you've got the overall project, which is buying, renovating, and bringing back the Jewish life. I'm going to say something now, and also at the end, because I'm not in a position to mince words. Time is of the essence for us, because we're dealing with Arabs and buying and selling. We can't play around. We need enormous financial help. I'm telling you directly, I'm not going to hold anything back. I mean, you need it. Like many groups, we need enormous help. That help has to be translated either directly, either individuals raising awareness, publicity, problems which family to choose because each one wants a particular place. There are enough pioneering giants ready to be at that forefront. The issue is money. Simple and straightforward. The Saudi Arabians, the Iraqis, they're pumping big money. There's money coming to the old city. We're starting to see now plaques in the old city donated by such and such a family. They're doing the Jewish thing, you know, Zionism. You know, that's what they do, because they know it's about being here. They helped out the people in the shul that stay around, giving them money when there's been no tourists. It's all about possession, and that takes... Mind you, not always do we buy possession. There's something you should be very aware of. In most instances, we buy what's called protected tenancy rights. Either the Israel Lands Authority, the Greek Orthodox Church, the Armenian Church, some lost landowner, the general custodian may be the owner, and we become the protected tenant under him, which is just as good because an organisation never dies, even if it does go bankrupt, but it can't die specifically, and basically you're there forever and a day. As opposed to an Arab who is a protected tenant, or an individual, you can only pass it on to your son or daughter if they've been living with you for 6 months before you die. So we've got situations, for example, where surveillance is being done. I don't want to say too much, but surveillance is being done in certain areas because we know people have moved in who aren't the protected tenants. And therefore, if a person living in a previously Jewishly owned home is not the original protected tenancy, but they've just passed it on or sold to another Arab, they're not allowed to be there. It's got to revert back to the original person. So what happens? They claim to the courts, we are the protected tenancy. I lived in the place beforehand. They bring witnesses. It's no big deal to be witnesses. So it's a battle in court between witnesses, which is why we have to then find a donor to help us pay for the court case, to get set up a surveillance camera, the investigator, just to prove ultimately we've got one place which is filming 24 hours a day. You hear what the extent that we have to go to? Just to make it proper. Let's go inside. The official crew are Tevet and the way I'm
Gam vegam.
Okay. The kids in this area, not one of the shops, all the shops are in Arab hands. There were 67 of the 70 shops were either Jewishly owned or leased before the pogroms, not one is today. But we have the massive residential area above, which is today known as Neot David. British said we don't want any more of a mix. After the second set of riots, the British would not allow Jews to be in this area. And that's when the thing of the quarter basically started up.
So this is squatters' rights?
Yes. What happened in 67, I didn't mention, but thank you for bringing me to mention it. When we came back in 1967, one thing the Israeli government did, and it's not for me to say whether it's right or wrong, but the reality, I'm telling you facts, they came back and they said any Arab that is in a previously Jewishly owned home, regardless of the circumstances that was taken of the riots, you are there as a protected tenant. You can't be moved. You can be bought, someone can buy ours, etc. Doesn't matter if you have the paperwork, which we've got plenty of paperwork from Turkey. They are there, no one was driven out. There were many that left, but no one was driven out, which is why our work is a very complicated work, but it's happening. We are moving back, there are families here, and we shouldn't forget that there are plenty of Jews in this area. Thank God, now, for example, the army is starting to walk around on their educational tours. Until recently, they would stop at the Jewish eighth, look over the area and say, oh, here's the Jewish quarter, here's the Muslim quarter, here's the Armenian quarter. There was an educational block. If you want to bring up a generation to say there's every and a day quarters, you think in terms of, okay, we've got the Kotzah, we've got a Jewish quarter, everything else, well, it's not important. But if you understand that the whole Yerushalayim is vital, if close to Har HaBayit is where we've always been, if Jewish presence is also in what is today known as the Muslim quarter, then you understand that you have to also walk around there, which is what we're doing.
Has that law changed about them being protected tenants?
No. It's still there. It's going to stay there. No government, not a left-wing, not a right-wing government, under any circumstances, and will just have wholesale kicking out. That's not going to happen. No one's going to be driven out, and neither should they be. They've been there for 30, 40 years, whether we like it or not. That has to be respected. We have the right, of course, to go back to Jewish homes, which is what we're doing. And the Jewish world, together we can do it. Together, inside of Israel, outside of Israel, we have the potential, and I'm telling you the potential, because the opportunities are there to bring back Jewish life. And once that happens, the whole Yerushalayim is properly in our hands. And no matter what the world says, and the world can scream, because the world wants to see it internationalized. The Arabs want to see it taken away. A radical, fringe, left-wing group in Israel would say that it's not important because they're lacking maybe something in the Jewish roots. Yisrael understands that the whole of Yerushalayim is ours. And this is the essence.
Dan, did the Arabs affect the lives of the Christians in the Christian quarter at all?
You mean the Malta Arabs affected the Christian?
Yes.
There is a little bit of a drop of the Christian Arabs in this area, like in Beit Lechem, where their lives were made to be miserable. So too in the old city, there has been a drop in the number of Christian Arabs. The Muslim Arabs are increasing on one hand. They are showing today to the world and to themselves that they want to be here. There was a recent survey done about whose is the old city. We're talking about the growth in presence, the growth in numbers, and just the fact that they believe this is there. They're teaching the kids that the whole of Yerushalayim is there. The only other group which is growing and very slowly is the group in the renewed Muslim area. Because houses are being bought, Jews are coming in, and there's a birth rate. That's the only other group which is building up in Yerushalayim. Means more or less stagnant. Come.
Daniel?
Yes. He's okay. He's a bit of a scared, but he's okay. He lives up there. Inside there is a kollel, there's a Beit Knesset today. There is a huge hall where we've had activities and conferences. The professors in Israel had a big conference there. The Yeshiva University, we brought 150 students. They were singing and dancing. This area, you have no idea what that did to the families here. Singing Hebrew songs throughout the whole of this area was something that hadn't been seen for years. So that was a great occasion we had there. I don't know if you know Dr. Charnoff, any of you? He passed away recently, but he actually put some money, for example, into this building to one of the rooms there is turned into a game centre. It may not be obvious, but I'm telling you that the children here don't run around normally to play as you and I do. Not me in Ma'ale Adumim, definitely me like I was in Australia. The Jews who live in this area, because of the situation, are forced to either not play in their rooms. If there's a donor that's going to convert some room into a sports room is one thing, or we have what's called rooftop playgrounds. Not here because it's not possible, but in some of our other buildings we put a security fence on the roof, some playground equipment, and at least the kids in that neighbourhood have got somewhere to go to. That's a project that needs to be taken on by someone. So there's a building today where there's 4 families living in there, plus another few families in the nearby neighbourhood that we've got a plan to put a playground on top. You'll see it in some of the literature later. That's a project that should be taken on by someone, by a group, by a community, by an organisation. I don't know. Maybe we can get the Ministry of Tourism. What do you say to maybe do something to in this area? You never know. If anyone ever sees the Ministry of Tourism, could you pass on the message back to them that you were in it, in the heart of walk. Thank God today the army, and I started telling you before, the army today are now walking everywhere. They actually had some type of unwritten law that they would stop here, look, because you're here at the edge of the Jewish 8, the Christian and the Muslim areas, the guards, the educational tours that were given to the army soldiers would explain about the various quarters and they'd go back. They didn't want any problems walking around this area. Even in the Kotel tunnels, you should be aware, they used to walk under, not come out the other side, they'd come back and come back to the Kotel area. There's been a change of guard, basically, in the certain people in the army, the educational corps, and now they're walking through the other side, and they're coming out like everyone else. And even here now, they're walking on throughout the whole of the area, not just in the one. The municipality started to do a little bit of a promenade here. It hasn't been finished totally. For many of our families, rather than walk down in the actual, sometimes crowded alleyways of the Shuk, this is a way for some of our families, especially from the Galicia compound, which can just be over there behind us, to get from the Jewish 8 or out of the city to where they are. You can see a massive camera on the pole there. There's a security booth It's one of the things I was talking about, where there is in-house security sitting all the time to seeing who's coming and going. That is what we call more of an open compound, as you'll soon see. Today there are 3 families living in that area. There is a yeshiva there called Aderet Eliyahu. In fact, most days you see them walking around with tefillin even at about 11, 12 o'clock even in the afternoon. Because the Gaon of Vilna used to wear it literally all day, every day, and they go in the stream of the ideology of the Vilna Gaon, and many of the students there will actually wear tefillin all day. We're actually just going to pass through the compound in order to get to what used to be the King George or the Yafo of the previous generation. 1,399, remember the figure? 1,399 Jews were living on one road, on compounds, the houses, on one road.
Sounds like Flatbush.
Sorry? We should bring Flatbush here. Why isn't Flatbush here? Flatbush should be here. We need. In fact, it's funny you mentioned Flatbush because this area is called the Galicia compound. Okay? Galicia compound. We have another compound called Beit Warsaw. In Mea Sharim, Batei Ungarim, Batei Natim. Once upon a time, not so long ago, 100, 120 years ago, the Jewish communities overseas felt such a passion and a drive and a will to say, we are going to build part of Yerushalayim. They took it upon themselves and they built. They bought a massive area. They built in it a mikveh, a Beit Knesset, a kollel, small rooms for the people who are here in Yerushalayim. That was the responsibility of Jews in Chutz La'aretz, which is why even still today the compounds are named after them. Even the North African Jews, the Moroccan Jews, built Bet Maravim, a massive compound. They had then 8 or 10 small families in. They had to have a lottery who was going to get the actual rooms, the people who were living here. But they saw it as their responsibility. So we need Beit Flatbush. We need Beit Flatbush. We need Beit New York. We need every single Jewish community should take on a compound. What's the big deal? We're pumping millions of dollars into massive edifices for Batei Knesiot and schools that are needed and vital. But number one has got to be Yerushalayim. We daven, we pray, with all due respect to our local needs. Yerushalayim comes first. End of story. Okay.
Why did you come?
My name is Helen Schwimmer. This is my husband, Dr. Richard Schwimmer. We're from Brooklyn, New York. We came with AFSI, Americans for a Safe Israel, because we wanted to show our support for the people and the land of Israel at this time.
Were you afraid when you came?
Absolutely not. We had total confidence in AFSI. We knew they would take good care of us. We were on bulletproof buses, but we also felt that our trip here was really a Kiddush Hashem, and we would be protected because we came to do good for the Jewish people.
Could you tell us a couple of things that you've done here?
Well, we started off right away. As soon as we landed, we headed for Judea and Samaria because we wanted to be a presence there. We wanted to show the people living there that there are people from all over the United States. We're from New York. There are people from New Mexico, people from Chicago, people from California, people from Rhode Island who wanted to come and be with them and show them how much we think of what they're doing and how much we support their presence in Judea and Samaria.
Did you do any volunteer work when you were here?
Yes, we volunteered with Livnot. We were packaging food for Yad Eliezer, which gives food to the poor people of Israel. So we spent a really wonderful morning with real tzaddikim, people who are working totally to give food to poor people who don't have it here. And really it was an eye-opener for us because we didn't realize how there are very poor people here who literally need food and don't have enough to eat.
What are you going to take back to tell your families?
I'm going to tell everyone who I meet when I come back, come. I took videos and pictures of all the things we did, and I'm going to show it to everyone. I'm a writer and a producer, so I have a lot of exposure. I'm planning to write about this for the Jewish press. I'll probably do a whole series of articles because there's so much to talk about. There's so much to say about everything we've seen and done.
Thank you very much. Could you tell us your name and where you're from?
My name is Ken Heller. I'm from Philadelphia. I'm a member of Americans for a Safe Israel, the chapter chairman.
My name is Gene Schussman. I'm from Philadelphia. I'm a member of AFSI and ZOA.
Could you tell us why you came here?
Shamefully, this is the first time after 25 years of Jewish activism and pro-Israel work that I have been to Israel. And I really wanted to come in April. It wasn't the right time, but I knew that I was going to come, and I'm happy to have been on this trip.
I'm an Israeli activist, and I was here last July, and I'm here to show my solidarity to the Jewish people, and it's just an itch I had to scratch.
What are you going to be taking back to your family?
I'll tell you, actually, as anxious as I was to come here and experience this tremendous spirituality, I'm going to be truthful, I can't wait to get home to begin to spread the word that it is perfectly all right to come to Israel. Israel needs us now more than ever. Adaret Kohanim, Beit Oroth, and the many communities in Judea and Samaria, and we have to really get cracking. We have to have people coming here. We have to have them spending money here, because that is the way we're going to show our solidarity with our brothers in Israel.
We only have ourselves. If we don't support ourselves, we don't stand behind Israel, we won't have an Israel. I'm very fortunate. When my dad was a child, he didn't have Israel, and he was kicked out of Russia by the Tsar. And I've had a very, very charmed childhood and life, as a matter of fact, because I have an Israel behind me. And I do everything in my power to support the state of Israel. And when I get back, I'm going to continue to tell people how important the state of Israel is to the Jewish people and to the world.
Thank you very much. Could you tell us your name and where you're from?
My name is Charlotte Wall. I live in New York City, and I'm a member of AFSI. I'm volunteering for AFSI. It's the most wonderful organization supporting Israel. I've been here in Israel many times on my own, as well as with AFSI before and the Hebron Fund, and several times with the SUP organization under the auspices of Rabbi Bruce Rudolph and Rabbi Eliezer Waldman. I think it's most important to come here to show our Chizuk with the people, and the people will give Chizuk for us. And they need tourists, and they need economic support, and I think this way we serve every purpose, we do what we can, and there's nothing more important than our physical presence. And I cannot come here often enough, and every time I come, it's most interesting to me, and the people here, especially in the so-called settlements in the communities, are just absolutely wonderful people with deep dedication and deep emunah, and I admire them, and they deserve all the support we can give.
Thank you very much. Could you tell us your name and where you're from?
My name is Tatiana Gorlin. I am from Boston, Massachusetts, from Brookline actually, but originally I am from Russia. My family immigrated in 1987.
Why did you come on this trip?
That is a very important trip of my life. I've come here to see with my own eyes what it means to keep Samaria and Judea with Israel and Israelis. And it is a very significant trip because I saw with my own eyes that settlers, Israelis in the settlements of Samaria, are not monsters as usually mass media shows it to us. They are soft-spoken, they are intelligent, they are nice people who do a great thing for Israel and for the whole world. And that's very important. I saw pain and strength together, and my heart belongs to these people.
What are you going to tell your friends about the safety here?
You know what? When I prepared this trip back in the United States, everyone thought that I was crazy to go to this part of the world and this particular part of Israel. And when I stepped my foot on the land of Samaria, I felt safe, you know, and I felt just the right place I was in, just the right place.
Thank you very much. Could you tell us your name and where you're from?
My name is Marion D.S. Dreyfus. I'm originally from England. I live now in New York City, and I work in New York City as a journalist and writer and as an activist for Israel, which takes a lot of my time and a lot of my emotional energy and my heart.
And why did you come on this trip?
I have been to Israel 13 times before this, but I felt I hadn't been here in a few years, and I felt very deeply the need to cement my feelings with the events that were happening in Israel and to consolidate what was happening in the newspapers and the media with what I knew to be true and which I subsequently found, great to my distress, were not, of course, true as they were shown on the newspapers and media in New York. And I feel that it's important to be walking the walk and to talk the talk. And many people speak about Israel, but I feel you have to do much more than just speak and just be an activist. And I feel with my body and with myself and my colleagues and friends here, I feel that I'm doing something very important that is not hardly enough to be of a piece with my people who are doing so much with their very lives and their bodies and their families.
Did you feel safe on your trip?
Actually, I was a bit nervous coming, but once I was here, I was overwhelmed with the fact that this is a huge country. This is a country of great, large hearts and great spirits, and we are, unfortunately, told too much about fear and unsafety, rather than the fact that there's 99.999% of safety. And so once I was here, I felt splendid, and I feel that it's an extraordinary place, an extraordinary country, and it's a great privilege to be here under any circumstances, but certainly today and now, the time we're here, the weather has been gorgeous, the people have been spectacular and unusually wonderful, which is our people, and I feel this can only be something that I can bring back to the people I know and my colleagues and share with them my feeling that it's wrong to think only in the negatives about Israel. It's important to think strength and beauty and wonderfulness and Torah and spirit.
Thank you very much.